Substantial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Now, as we know, the corporate media, they've been making a really big deal of Trump's travel ban. And he's been pushing the travel ban since he became president. And the corporate media and the Ninth Circuit Court, well, they keep, trying to stop what is happening in the Supreme Court. Well, they allowed parts of it to be implemented. But what's very interesting about all of this, where the corporate media is telling us that everyone is completely against it, Statista, well, they did some research, and they found that more and more individuals are now siding with the travel ban. And their research found that 37% of people strongly support the State Department's guidelines, 23% somewhat support them, 14% are both opposed and strongly opposed to the legislation, while 11% said they don't have any opinion on the situation whatsoever. So what is happening very slowly is that more and more people are saying, you know something, maybe we should have the travel ban, which I find very, very interesting because the corporate media is making everyone believe that everybody is completely against it and that it's illegal, you're not allowed to do it. And it's starting to look like people are looking at the situation and saying, well, maybe it's not that bad of an idea, because we can see that things are slowly changing. Now, we know that Trump, Putin, Xi Jinping, and the rest of the leaders, they were at the G20 meeting. And Trump really did not budge on the climate agreement whatsoever. And I see in the corporate media, they're saying, well, the U.S. is going to be isolated in the climate arena. This is what Trump has done. But it appears that this might not be true, because there's a lot of countries that are saying that maybe we will be removing ourselves from the climate accord. Actually, Turkey right now, they said, listen, it appears that the U.S. withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, and Turkey is saying, well, since they removed themselves, Turkey has moved to suspend the ratification of the deal. And we're getting word that there are other countries that are saying the same thing or scaling back of what they want to do. So it looks like whatever Trump did by removing the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord, other countries are now looking at it saying, well, maybe it's not that great of an idea. So is the U.S. really isolated, or has Trump started something where the corporate media, the deep state, they don't like this and they're trying to make it seem like the United States is isolated? Now, the corporate media, they didn't want the meeting between Putin and Trump. They tried to tell everyone that it's going to be a disaster. This is not going to be good. And they pushed this agenda all the way up to the point where they actually met. And we can see they're still trying to push this agenda. And Trump is out there saying, listen, it is time to move forward in a constructive cooperation with Russia. And we know Trump and Putin, they discussed many things. They sat down for 2 hours. Now, they're making it seem like nothing was done, nothing was accomplished, and they're still talking about, body language and the handshake and everything else. But there was a Syrian ceasefire. They talked about hacking into the election system. Putin asked, do you have proof? And of course, Trump had no proof. And the corporate media, was out there saying that they're not going to discuss this. Trump's not going to bring it up. But he did, to shut everyone up. But what they really did, if you were watching and looking and understanding what they were doing, they're working together, president to president. They are discussing things now. They're looking to get closer with the relationship. Now, the deep state, the globalists, the neocons, they do not want this. So they were signaling with a ceasefire deal with Syria, and they also discussed forming an impenetrable cybersecurity unit to prevent election hacking. This is to put everything to rest about Russia hacking the election system, because now the United States is going to work with Russia to stop this type of thing. This was done on purpose. What they were both doing was saying, listen, we're going to be working together, and the reign of the globalists, the reign of the deep state, it is coming to an end. And we can see just by them talking with each other, by meeting in public, by sitting down for longer than 30 minutes and actually ironing out a ceasefire deal, we can see that this is something the globalists, the neocons, the deep state, the central banks, they do not want. Now, does this mean they're going to give up and say, oh, well, they did it, they're getting closer, we can't do anything? No, they're going to continually try. Remember, there's still rogue factions within government, and you can see it, you can spot them, because as soon as they speak in absolutes, you know who they are. Now, we see that the U.S., they decided to have more drills in the South Korean area. They flew U.S. bombers. They did it with South Korea. And, of course, this is to provoke North Korea, to show that, yes, we're ready for you. North Korea is not going to do anything. So the U.S. Air Force sent 2 B-18 strategic bombers to carry out live fire tests on a training range in South Korea. Now, this is what the Chinese and the Russians want to stop. They want to stop the drills in exchange for North Korea stopping their nuclear program, or North Korea stopping their nuclear program in exchange for the United States and South Korea where they're going to stop their drills. They want both sides to stop right now. Pause. And let's try to work this out. But the deep state does not want this. So they're going to continue with drills. They're going to continue to try to provoke North Korea. But we can see right now from Abe, from Moon Jae-in, from Trump, all saying that, listen, the neighbors who border North Korea, they need to work out some type of solution. And without Trump saying so much as, yes, we need Russia in this to work out a solution, he's calling on them. And you can see, because who else are the neighbors of North Korea? It's China and Russia. He wanted this to happen, but he couldn't come out and say, yes, Russia, we need you in here, because the corporate media, they would have just gone crazy over this, saying this was collusion, this was planned. So he does it in other ways of creating a situation where Russia has to be pulled in, and Russia and China and the U.S. and South Korea and Japan, in a situation where all of these countries can work together to calm the situation down with North Korea. And this is what he's manipulating right now to make happen, instead of going to war, which the deep state, neocons, the central banks, that's what they want. Now, Tillerson, he is out there and he decided to personally intervene in the ongoing Gulf dispute with Qatar and the Gulf nations, and he is going to get involved in this. And we can see that Tillerson, along with Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, they're calling for all parties to resolve their differences sooner rather than later. And both agree that Qatar could do more to stem terror financing from within its border. And they believe the same in varying degrees of all Gulf countries, where they know this is where the terrorism is coming from. And we know that all these Gulf nations, along with the deep state, the neocons, and Israel and the UK, the coalition forces, they've been supporting terrorism all along. Where do you think Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Al-Sham, all of these terrorist groups, they've come from these countries. Now, Tillerson said something very interesting, saying that the terrorism financing may be the easiest to resolve with increased U.S. monitoring of where the funding is actually coming from, investigating who is doing the funding and where it's coming from, and tracking it down. Now, this is very interesting, because if you follow the money, it will lead you to the source of the problem. And he's suggesting this in these countries. Now, you know, the Gulf nations, they don't want this to happen. Saudi doesn't want this to happen. The United Arab Emirates does not want this to happen. Qatar doesn't want this to happen. The UK, the deep state, Israel, they don't want this to happen, because all of this would lead back to all of these countries. And of course, a lot of this is dark pool money, but you still can track it down. You can still find out where it's all coming from. There's always a trail. Just like the United States says, listen, we can't figure out how the Islamic State is funding themselves. We can't find those oil convoys. We don't know where they're dropping them off. And of course, Russia stepped in and said, we know where the oil convoys are. We can see them in satellite with drones, and they're bringing them up through Turkey. You're stealing the oil from Syria and selling it in Turkey. We know exactly what's happening. It's that easy. Now we see that the Iranian Coast Guard, they apprehended 4 Saudi Arabian sailors. They've entered Iran's territorial waters in the Persian Gulf, and the Saudi vessel was seized, and so far there's been no hostilities or anything like that being reported. It looks like it might have been a fishing vessel, but again, we're waiting for more information to come out. Now we see out in Iraq, well, it looks like the battle with the Islamic State for 3 years has come to an end. And it looks like they've driven the Islamic State out, even though the Islamic State is saying that they're vowing to fight to the death, and they'll do whatever they possibly can to hit back. It looks like Mosul is liberated. A lot of the Islamic State commanders, they've been committed suicide, blowing up themselves with explosive belts before they're captured, destroying all evidence of what they've been doing. And we know what they're destroying. They're destroying the evidence that links them to other governments, other intelligence agencies. And they're just getting rid of all evidence right now, so there's nothing linking any of this to any of these areas. Now we see that the U.S.-Russian ceasefire, it has gone into effect in the southwest Syria area, and we can see that the U.S., Jordanians, Russia, they're going to be monitoring the de-escalation zones covered by the ceasefire. Now, we need to remember that the last time we had a U.S.-Russian ceasefire, well, the U.S. droned Syrian soldiers. So we need to be alert about what is going to happen here, because we need to understand that the deep state, the neocons, they don't want the ceasefire. They never like the ceasefires. They do it to regroup, to rearm. And we can see that Trump is saying that we're having the ceasefire to save lives, but we need to understand that the deep state, they might try to do something to cancel out the ceasefire, just like they've done many times before. Now, I talked about certain individuals that we can definitely see that they're part of the neocon, globalist, deep state agenda. And one of those individuals is the ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. And she is out there, talking about war, talking about red lines, talking about everything completely opposite of what Trump is talking about. Now, they were supposed to rein her in and have everything vetted through the administration, but it looks like this is not happening. And I think at this point that they need to take a very close look at Nikki Haley, because it looks like she's causing more problems than actually trying to help the situation. The main focus with all of this, with North Korea, with Syria, is to try to find a peaceful solution, not to try to find war. Now, we've had this in the past where all these neocon, globalists, deep state central banks, they've been pushing for war, and you can tell from their deep state speak, they talk in absolutes, cross a red line, we're running out of options, we need to attack, we need to go in militarily, we need to do this. This is not going to work. Yes, for the deep state, for the central bankers, it'll work for them because this is what they want. For the people of the world, this will not work. And I think what is happening right now, she's just out there saying whatever she possibly can to try to get something started. Now, of course, she's probably receiving these instructions from the neocons, the deep state, and these individuals, because you can see that Trump and his administration, they need to take a very close look at this individual and most likely remove her and many other individuals, which I think is going to come down the line here. Because as the administration gets more and more power, removes a lot of these individuals, gains more traction on what he wants to do, you can see that things are actually changing. Now, are they moving quickly in the way everyone wants? Well, those are your individual expectations. Everyone has expectations, It doesn't mean they're going to happen in the way that you want. Remember, they're dealing with this body that has been entrenched in government for so long that you just can't walk in there and say, you're all out and I'm in. It doesn't work that way, because what they'll do is they'll just take him out right off the bat. So he needs different solutions, different ways of manipulating the situation to gain power. And this is what he's doing at this point. And you can see it. You can see it with the meeting with Putin and what they were discussing. You could see it the way he's calling out the fake news. You could see the way he's trying to say, okay, I don't have red lines. We're not looking for war. We would like peace. Now, of course, he's not saying it in so many words because, remember, there's a lot of neocons, a lot of deep state, a lot of central bankers out there. But what we are doing and what we see happening right now is the opposite of what's been happening. And all these flare-ups that you see, that is from the leftover deep state central bankers, neocons, who are still fighting to get this war started. So we still have this battle going on right now. And the clock is ticking down. The economy is deteriorating. The central bankers around the world, they are tightening. We're seeing these events occur in the financial industry where they are very, very similar to what happened back in 2008. We're following the patterns, and the patterns over time, they're pretty much exactly the same on the way the central bankers bring down the economy. And we know that the system has been built on one gigantic illusion. Nothing has improved. Actually, it's been the opposite all this time, where things had deteriorated so drastically that we went from a manufacturing country to a service country, and we're not even a service country anymore because retail is imploding. The food industry is imploding. So what's left? Not much. The system needs to be reset.